Hey everyone, Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd. You know who it is, and it is time for another episode of the weekly track roundup, where I go over what I felt were the best and worst tracks of the week. Let's just get straight into it. No BS, let's just plow straight through the intro so we can get into the tracks. The good people over at SeatGeek, of course, are sponsoring this episode. They are a fantastic app that aggregates tickets from live events all over the web to make buying simple. They put a 1 to 100 score on each ticket available to you to let you know if you're getting a good deal or a bad deal. And they also have an in-app view from Seat that lets you see where you're going to be sitting at. Use promo code DROP on your first order to get $20 off once you have picked the app up and you have decided whatever ticket, whatever concert you're going to be buying into. And that's it, guys. Just support them. Link down there in the description because they support the channel and they support the segment. All right, let's get right into the weekly track roundup here. It is now the weekly track roundup. Every episode of the roundup prior with this title card has said Wiki track roundup. So now the L is in there. It's new and improved. That's what we do here. We're professional. When we run into problems like this, we fix them weeks and weeks and weeks later. Also want to remind you guys down in the description box, I'm going on tour in October. Link to tickets for all the dates down there, again, in the description box. I'm doing West Coast dates. I'm doing East Coast dates. Tickets are selling pretty decent so far, so they are going to be cheaper before you buy at the door as well, just to kind of let you know. We have an Amazon Associates link down there. If you're going to buy on if you're going to buy something on Amazon, click on that link. If you live in the U.S., again, if you live in the U.S., click on the link, brings you to the home page. Anything you buy after that, we get kickback from it. Does not add to the overall price. And we have a similar thing going on with the good people over at Turntable Lab, where you can buy some colorful pressings of records that I've reviewed on the channel, or turntable stuff, or speakers, you know, audiophile stuff for the budding record collector in your life or yourself. And here we go. Here are the worst tracks. With no further ado. All right, let's see what Let's see what we got here. Oh, a new killer song. New killer song. You know, honestly, I was pretty hype on the tracks that have been released from this album thus far, but this new track over here, Jesus Christ, it's titled Some Kind of Love, and it is the most saccharine, gross, and like completely stomach churning love song that I have heard in a while. And it's definitely not going to be a song that I'm looking forward to hearing again once I actually listen to this album in full. You know, even if I end up doing that, because this song honestly has kind of turned me off of the idea a little bit. But let's move on from there, because this track generally I feel is kind of gross. Next worst song of the week, in my humble opinion, is this new track from the Horrors titled Weighted Down, which is kind of surprising because every single track I've heard from this new Horrors album so far, and possibly this album could grow on me, this track could grow on me a little bit once I hear it in the context of the entire album. But this is like the most ungratifying song I've heard from the Horrors in a long time. It just kind of seems like to be this long-winded, abstract, weird, somewhat noisy rock track that never quite resolves or builds up into anything. It's just really obtuse and for no reason whatsoever. There's not really an interesting sound to the song. There's not really an interesting structure to the song. It just kind of feels like I'm continually listening to something that is teasing toward getting something going, but yet it never really happens. Again, really not gratifying, the most unsatisfying single from this new album so far, but the tracks so far have been so weird and left of field and have a kind of alternative dance vibe that I still am mildly curious as to what they're going to pull through on this record. It seems like it's building up to be their weirdest release yet, so still I am kind of curious. And finally, this new Destroyer song, unfortunately, I did not care for at all. Tinseltown, Swimming in Blood. The throbbing electronics on here and Dan Behar's general lack of interesting lyrics and his very mild vocal delivery on this track, in my opinion, make this one of the most lifeless singles Destroyer has ever released, which is kind of disappointing because this is like, I don't know, Destroyer is typically really in my wheelhouse. Like, I'm very much taken in by Dan's charms most of the time, and that is just not the case this time around, unfortunately. the music was just really lacking, and it doesn't help that the music video just seems really thrown together. But let's move on to the tracks that I thought were meh, definitely worth a nod, but did not win me over or anything like that. First, new Weezer song. It's titled Beach Boys. I don't know, man. It just has some really sugary production. I mean, the hook is kind of sharp, but it sounds like I'm listening to the sort of instrumentation that would have landed on the first Foster the People album or something. It's just got no bite whatsoever. It just seems like a little too, I don't know, dolled up to be a Weezer song, even though their sound is typically pretty slick. But it just seems a little too, I don't know, lighthearted, I guess, to actually, like, you know, make an impact, in my opinion. Marilyn Manson has a new single out, which the verses, I think, could have used a little work. Like, there could have been a better melody, there could have been a bit more tension, just to kind of keep the track interesting during the verse portions of the song. But overall, I like his vocal performance on this thing. I like the production on this thing. It seems to go back to that really raw industrial rock sound that I enjoyed so much on releases such as Antichrist Superstar. It feels like he's really kind of taken it back to basics a little bit on this thing, and in a good way. I think over his past couple of releases, he has been slowly kind of improving, you know, almost like breaking things down to like, okay, let's totally just knock the whole thing over, go to square one. And this to me so far sounds like another step in the progression. And the chorus is fantastic. It's a burning, searing, fiery chorus that, you know, again, kind of takes me back to some of the high points early on in his career. So while I don't think the song is perfect, it does kind of have my mouth watering, does have me excited for what he's going to be doing on this new album dropping this year. So new Marilyn Manson album this year. Keep your eyes out, keep your ears open, bitch. Moving on from there, Makthaverskan has a new song out. You know, typical washed out, sort of twee, sort of noise pop kind of thing from these guys. You know, nothing altogether new from Makthaverskan, but, you know, it's actually not that bad of a track. It's kind of a decent ballad. It's, you know, got a nice sort of vibe and tune to it. You know, I mean, for people who sort of like that style, there's a lot of good stuff about this track, you know. Just in my opinion, I feel like the band has kind of lost a little bit of the edge that kind of made them stand out in the first place, you know what I mean? But maybe with this new record, they'll kind of grab it back. Ibeyi, I know I'm not saying that correctly. I'm just breaking everybody's balls. They have a new track out, which is titled, I got to get the title right over here because I don't want to mispronounce this because it is in Spanish. The song is titled Mi Voy and features a singer who I'm not fully aware of prior to this track anyway, named Mala Rodriguez. And it's not a bad song, you know, definitely not as fantastic as the track they just dropped with Kamasi Washington, but it seems like they're dabbling in a bit of auto-tuned reggaeton on this track. It's got a nice beat. It's got a nice groove. The auto-tune is a little heavy-handed on the song, but I do like the melody of the track. I do think the vocal performances are very nice. You know, they definitely still stand out to me as one of the more unique pop groups out there right now. So still very much looking forward to this album and kind of the plethora of just international influences they sort of bring to the table, and sort of looking forward to hearing them kind of play out across an entire track list on this forthcoming record. Gucci Mane, new song, Curve, Weeknd. It's okay. You know, I mean, it's kind of typical for both of them at this point. Abel dominates a lot of the song. It's almost like Gucci Mane is featured on the track, you know, to be honest, because like Abel, the Weeknd really takes over a majority of the track, and it's very smooth. It's very moody. Gucci's performance is fine. You know, it's not blown me away or anything, but, you know, it just seems kind of formulaic and predictable at this point, to be quite honest. And finally, in this section, I will give a shout out to the new Burial track, Rodent. I don't know, just kind of seems like a little bit of run-of-the-mill skeletal, very average dubstep that, you know, you would have caught like in the late, you know, 2000s or like 2010 or 2011 or something. Burial to me is on this recent material that has been dropping via Bandcamp and Hyperdub. Just not really, I don't know, wowing me or anything. Does not seem to be as experimental or as explorative as some of his best work. I'm just sort of wondering if that same drive to do something different and be a trailblazer and be a pioneer is still sort of there. You or if that's just something he happened to be doing and now he's just kind of staying part of the chorus because this is just the sound he always wanted to play with, and now it's just not as revolutionary as it was a handful of years ago when he was putting out some of his best stuff. But even this track, along with, some other new material, is not as long and as epic and as multifaceted as, some of his best work. So it's like there's clearly like an ambition level in the older stuff that is not showing up in the newer stuff. While, Rodent is fine. There's some cool vocal samples on this thing. The beat is certainly cool. It just seems a little tepid, in my opinion. And that will bring us to the tracks that I thought were the best songs of the week, tracks I needed to point out, tracks that I was really excited by this week. New track out from Timbre. Sort of seems to be like a B-side or a non-album track. Don't quote me on that. Could be totally wrong on that. I don't want to, look like a total dum-dum. Educate me. Educate my ass. But it's a new track titled Les Egouts, which I'm probably not saying right because I don't speak no fucking French. But here we go. It kind of brings back the moody, noir, sort of strung out, very dark, very dreary sound that made Timbre so special and so exciting in the first place. Like, this is not the weird, new wavy, synthy, dark wavy, sort of off-kilter sound that they delivered on their last album. This, to me, plays to the strengths that the band had on Hot Dreams and on their previous album as well, but without entirely just kind of rehashing everything from those albums. Listen, I'm not exactly sure what happened on the latest Timbre album. It's just kind of a mess, to be completely honest. I did not care for it really at all, and I'm just kind of hoping the band, I don't know, sort of sees the album as a detour and sort of finds the ability to build on what they have been sort of progressing towards so far, rather than kind of veering off in the direction that they had set with their latest project. New single with 21 Savage by Post Malone. This song is titled Rockstar, and it's actually not like a bad single. Like, Malone's vocals on the track don't sound bad. The vocal melody is really sticking and haunting and kind of moody. The beat hits hard, but kind of still has that sad, spacey trap vibe. 21 Savage sounds, quiet but mean on the track. There are a lot of good things about this single, and, looking forward to seeing what Post Malone is going to do on this new album over here, because it sort of seems like he has grown a bit since his last record, and, could potentially be, kind of maturing as an artist a little bit on this thing. Now, I'm not saying that this track is deep or anything like that, but it certainly sounds a little bit more well put together and a bit more sure of itself and sure of its sound and sure of its style than, a lot of the weird trap, ballad, acoustic guitar fusions that I really did not care for at all on his debut. New track from Mariam the Believer of, Wild Birds and Peace Drums fame. She has another solo record coming out very soon. I loved her last solo album, although it wasn't even released in the US, I don't think. Or if it was, it took a while to actually get it over here. And now she has a new album, which I hope is released in the US sooner rather than later. And the new ballad sounds fantastic. I don't want to spoil too much about it, but, the dramatic vocals, the very patient and moody guitars, the fantastic percussion, everything that I loved about her last album sort of seems to be coming through in this particular track, which is the title of it is escaping me right now, but it's not the only song that has been released from this forthcoming album so far, if you check it out on Spotify or if you check it out on Apple Music. I think she's a really beautiful songwriter. I think she has a lot of character to her voice. I think she really has something special going on for her musically, but for whatever reason, it's just kind of not really taking over here in the States. I don't really know as to why, despite the fact that she's already in a band that has been praised over here, like, by critics and music fans alike. But for whatever reason, it's sort of like her solo stuff isn't really taking over here. Even though her solo material is kind of vastly different than the Wild Birds and Peace Drum stuff. It's not this kind of weird, zany, kooky, heavily percussive, vocal and drum music or anything like that. It is some legitimately refined and very passionate and very beautiful art pop. Moving on from there, I really did enjoy the new King Krule song, this track titled Dumb Surfer, which is kind of a really weird and interesting change of pace for Archie. I always knew and suspected that post-punk was a huge influence on his music, but I didn't think that he would so overtly go in that direction on this song or any song really, because this is kind of a hard-hitting, low-down, dirty, filthy, kind of gruff and like despondent, edgy post-punk track with like a lot of guts and a lot of fire and just a lot of primal energy that I thought was pretty fantastic. And I don't know, man, looking forward to seeing him maybe play with more sounds in this direction. Iglooghost has a new track out titled White Gum, and this new song that he has is on a forthcoming album that's going to be on Brainfeeder Records. And just as usual, Iglooghost's fucking production on this thing, like, he is a beat master. Like, the sound of this track is incredible. Like, the sounds and the samples and everything, it's so jittery, it's so dense, it's so intense, it's so fucking mind-blowing, it's so off the goddamn wall. You know, I'm really kind of at a loss as to how to describe it. Like, this is sort of the difficulty I would have talking about his music, like his last EP that I loved. If I had to talk about it after listening to it, like, you know, a couple times, you know, everything that I had to say about that record was just after numerous intensive listens. You know, his music is so dense, even though the songs aren't incredibly long. There's so much going on in one single song that it would take almost an eternity to explain it all. And man, just the detail this guy works into his tracks is just amazing, and everything that he does, it just sounds like it's coming from another freaking dimension. So I mean, if you listen to one electronic music producer this year, you know, if you listen to one freaking electronic music producer's album this year, please make it the new Iglooghost album, because again, the sounds that he's drawing up here are incredible. Although, not to throw any shade toward my good dude here, Forte, who I think has dropped one of his better tracks in a while. Like, this is a very colorful, very texture-rich techno track with a very lavish and full and beautiful ending. I don't know what to say, man. He really kind of floored me a little bit with this track over here. I didn't know he still kind of had, you know, some fresh and new ideas in him. And, you know, sort of hoping that he can take the ambitions of this track and kind of compile it into a record, because it seems like lately he's just been kind of dropping like a lot of, you know, loosies here and there, a lot of spare projects here and there. And, you know, it would be interesting to sort of hear him build up to an album again, because, you know, he has made some fantastic records over the years, and I would love to see him sort of, you know, approach that once again, you know, especially if the material is this good. Got to give a shout out to my dude Christian Scott, who is being very prolific this year, like in the midst of releasing a trilogy, and this new track over here from the latest installment of that is titled AvengHer. And it's kind of a very, I don't know, it's a very well-performed jazz track backed with some fantastic, you know, punchy sort of synth chords that drop in at one point in the track, and a pretty steady hip-hop beat. I wish the percussion was a little bit more dense, did a little bit more, but the trumpet performances and just all the solos and improvs in general across the track are fantastic and have a lot of personality and a lot of zest. I'll leave it at that. Moving on, got to give a shout out to the new Björk track. Of course, The Gate. Björk has a new track, not a new track, well, obviously a new track, but a new album coming out this year. And this new song over here was an interesting one. You know, definitely not as, I guess, clearly structured as some of her most memorable work. You know, it's a lot of strings, it's a lot of vocals, it's very, I guess, kind of blobby, it's very wispy, it's very vast, it's not, I guess, all that well defined. You know, it's just like a whole sea of emotion, and she sort of just dunks you into it. And, you know, would I like to hear an entire album of stuff exactly like this? Probably not. However, given just the tone of the song, given that this is the first taste of the album, given that the song is titled The Gate, I can only assume that this is literally like a segue or an introduction or some kind of entrance into what we're going to be experiencing on this forthcoming Björk album. It does sound refreshing. It does sound new. It doesn't merely sound like she's kind of revisiting a certain sound or era in her career like she was on her last album, Volna Cura, which resembled musically and stylistically a lot of moments on Vespertine, in my opinion. This record sort of seems like she's doing something a little bit more ambitious, a little bit more abstract thus far, and looking forward to sort of hearing her take it into into a new direction. And finally, I got to give a shout out to my boys in Bad Bad Not Good, who have a new track, Confessions Part 3, out featuring Colin Stetson on saxophone. And I don't know, it's kind of like a bit of a dream collaboration, a dream jazz collaboration, because Colin brings so much to their sound. They provide such an amazing and a fantastic musical backdrop for Colin to sort of do his thing, you know, with the continual breathing technique and just the fluttering and the endless cycling arpeggios. It's a really invigorating performance. It seems like these guys have a lot of chemistry and would definitely be interested in hearing them work together and collaborate once again in the future. And that's going to be it, guys. Those are all the tracks that I wanted to bring up in this weekly track roundup. Thank you very much for watching. Again, down there in the description, the good people over at SeatGeek, they are sponsoring this episode, so support them. Also, again, those tour dates are down there in the description, along with our Amazon Associates link, our Turntable Lab link. And I will see you guys in the next one. Hope you guys got some good recommendations out of this video. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're staying hydrated and eating your veggies. And I will catch you guys in the next one. I'll let you guys with another review real soon. Forever.